Hey everyone, and welcome back to Developer Soapbox. Today I'll be showing you 4 Linux command line tools which you can now get out of the box with Windows 10. So that's right, I mean without needing to install the available Linux subsystem. These are straight out of the box, starting with build 17063, which most people should be upgraded by now. And as a developer, I guarantee that you'll find these extremely useful. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first command we'll go over is SSH, or secure shell. So this can be used to securely connect to other computers if they have an OpenSSH server installed and execute command line commands on that particular server. And as you can see, if you just type SSH, they'll give you some of the command line options. For now, we'll just keep it simple. I have a Linux server running, and I'm going to connect to that Linux server. I do have a user on that server that's also developer Soapbox. So the way this works is it's SSH and then your user on that server and then either the server name or IP. So in this case, it's in my local network. So it's 192.168.1.105. And once you hit enter, it'll ask you for your password on that, again, for that user on that machine. And there we go. So I'm now connected to my Linux. Once I'm in here, you can see that I'm actually now executing on that server. If I type name A, you can see that it is Ubuntu server. It's actually another VM I'm running on my same computer. This does by default use SSH, the standard port for SSH, which is port 22. I can exit by typing exit. If I do want to specify the port, you can actually do SSH -P for port and then specify your port. And again, just user @server. And same thing. So there we go. So we're in. Type again exit to exit out of the server. And I'm back in my local computer now. And even though this is a pretty simple command or tool, before this, pretty much all Windows developers that are familiar with SSH are familiar with PuTTY, which is the client you would have to download and utilize every time that you need to use SSH. So it's definitely very nice that we now have it out of the box. So the second command I want to show you is sftp, which is very similar to SSH. Essentially, you're securely connecting to a server, and you can then use the FTP functionality. So you can either get files or put files on that server. And the command itself is very similar. So sftp developer Soapbox, so user @server or IP. And same thing, put your password, and now I'm on that server. Now it's a little bit different as far as the commands. So you have just as you have with SSH or just Linux command line in general, you can do ls to see the listing on that server, but you also have lls, which is local ls, and that will give you a listing on your PC. Okay. Other than that, you can also, like I mentioned, you can get or put files. So here you can see that on my computer, I have this test to put.txt. So if I want to put this file on the server, I can just put test put.txt, and there we go. So we uploaded the file to the server. If I do ls, which is executed on that server, you can see the file there, test to put.txt. Let's say I want to download a file from the server to my local machine. So let's say I want to download this test.txt file. I can just do a get test.txt, and you can see that it's fetching. And if I do a local ls, there's the test right there. And you can also remove files from the remote server. So let's say that I want to remove the file that I just put. You can just use the rm test to put.txt, and that does remove the file from the remote server that I. And again, another simple tool, but also very useful. But again, it's very nice to have out of the box functionality. as opposed to having to download something like a FileZilla if you're just wanting to do some very simple file transfer operation. Okay, third, we're almost done. So third out of the four tools that I'm going to go over is tar, which is essentially a zipping utility, right? So let me exit from the server first, and CLS to clear command line. And if I check the contents of my directory, let's say that you wanted to zip the test to put.txt file. So you can use the tar command, and if you type tar enter, it does give you the options that you have with that command. So I'll explain some of the options right now. So if I want to zip a file, I can do tar minus c zf. And the way I remember this is create zip file, right? So C is for create, Z is for using gzip, and then file, meaning you're going to specify the file as the next as the parameter, and F does have to be the last option on here. So then you would specify the name of the archive. So let's call this zip.tar, and then the contents that you want to put in that archive. Okay, so it's zipped. If I go into the directory to show you, you can see that I have my original test to put.txt, and I have the zip tar, which is a smaller file. Obviously, the bigger the file, the original file, the more difference you should see. Since it's such a small file, there really isn't that much difference, just because just the overhead of zipping itself doesn't justify in this case. But this is a pretty nice zipping utility, especially if you're downloading files from Linux in general. That usually tar is the default tool used to zip files. So it's nice to have a native way of doing that in Windows now, of unzipping. And then to unzip, it's basically tar, and then X for extract, and same thing, ZF for zip file, and then you would just specify the archive. Oh, and actually let me remove the file first so you can see that it actually does put it out there. Oops. So you can see that that file is no longer there. So if I do tar extract zip file and zip.tar, and there's the file. So you can see that it unzipped the archive. And last but certainly not least is the curl command, which is actually my personal favorite addition to Windows 10. And it's primarily used as a HTTP client. It's by no means restricted just to HTTP. It can actually handle a multitude of different protocols, but it's primarily used as essentially a lighter version of like a Postman, for example, if you're familiar with that. So if you're a developer, you can use it for example, for doing gets on RESTful services. You can pretty much do any sort of the various actions, right? So you can do a post, you can do a delete, and so on to your RESTful service using curl. And just like if you just type curl, it does specify that you can get some help. So if I do curl help, it will list all of the options. And like I mentioned, you can even do authentication, simple types of authentication. So either specifying within your headers, specifying security tokens, or basic auth you can certainly do. In this case, just to keep it simple, I'm just going to do a get to a open RESTful API, and I'll use the Star Wars API. So if I go in there, and if you're not familiar with this, it's essentially just the open API that provides back Star Wars information, right? It's like an encyclopedia of Star Wars information. So if I do curl and paste the URL, there you go. You can see it returns a JSON payload with, in this case, it's all the available endpoints of that service. The default action for curl is get right? So in this case, it's doing a get. You can specify if you want to do a post and so on. Again, just because I'm essentially just showing that these tools are available in Windows, I won't go too much in depth here, but just another example, just to show you that you're not limited to just JSON payloads. For example, let's say you wanted to download the HTML contents of a particular site, so you can do curl. Let's do, for example, google.com, and you want to save these to a file, right? So let's say google.html, right? So I'm basically, the greater than symbol here is basically gonna write that to a file as my output. You can see that it downloads the contents. If I go in here and open with, I'll do Firefox, right? So it essentially downloads the HTML. If you open it with TextPad, you can also see that it is the actual HTML. So I really hope you found this video useful. If you did, please go ahead and hit that like button. If you're interested in more content from me, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on any new content that I upload.